Happy Wednesday morning, people. We've only been apart from each other for 24 hours, but I'm back again for even more. Countdown to Classic. This is a podcast that educates, informs, and gossips about World of Warcraft Classic. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we discuss the news, hot button issues, and content of the highly anticipated World of Warcraft Classic. I'm your host, Josh Corbett, and we are back with the second episode of Countdown to Classic within a 24-hour window. Today, I'll be taking a trip through the forums once again. Unfortunately, we missed out on a forums episode last week because I got a little bit sick, and I was so happy to have people write to me and say, "Hey Josh, what gives? Where's our forum breakdown? Are you ditching them?" And the answer is absolutely not. But they are a lot of work though, so please appreciate that there may be the odd week where I need to bench them for an interview in its place, just so I can prepare them to a standard that I am happy with. But this week, we are good to go. Now, if this is your first time joining the show, I say thank you for listening. And how we do things here on Countdown to Classic is we hear from you. Yes, you, the players of World of Warcraft, as it's not my opinion that counts, but yours. If you have any comments on what you're about to hear on the show and want your input possibly read out on future episodes, then email me at feedback@countdowntoclassic.com or call into the show on a Friday or Saturday night Eastern Standard Time. And also, please keep those memory lane and anger management submissions coming, people. Also, do you like prizes? Well, if you'd like to go into the running to win awesome World of Warcraft monthly prizes via the show, then also please feel free to check out the show's Patreon page as well, with the link in the show notes and on the website. You can find out about all the fun ways that you can get even more out of Countdown to Classic. But for now, let's get straight to the news and discussions of the week with this week's Forum and Fauna. Each week, Countdown to Classic reads out and comments on your expert input on the hot button issues and content of the sure to be amazing World of Warcraft Classic. The show picks 3 topics from the WoW Classic subreddit or various World of Warcraft forums online and discusses the points both for and against the particular topics. We start this week with the following post that grabbed my attention over at the World of Warcraft Classic subreddit from user Hazeless, which was titled, "How different are both factions? I'm thinking about switching at launch." And that post went on to say the following. "I've played Horde all my life, both in retail and on private servers. I'm thinking about rolling Alliance at launch to make it different, get a new experience. How different is the leveling for Alliance, and just in general? Do the factions feel different? I know on Horde people were always nice and open to help you when you were getting ganked and stuff, and I really enjoyed that aspect. Would rolling Alliance be worth it for the newer feeling?" So in breaking down this topic from both sides of the coin, as we do here at Countdown to Classic, we'll be analysing the pros and cons of the opposing factions and raise points that may tempt you to try to see the game through a different lens when Classic comes around. I'll start with a couple of posts, with the first being from user Undoer, who says this. "I've played a lot on both factions. The people are almost exactly the same on either side in my experience. If you've never rolled Alliance at all, I'd do it for the quests, but I expect you'll find yourself wanting to go back to Horde, as I always find myself wanting to go back to Alliance. The aesthetic is a big influencer on your experience, as well as the quests you're doing. And I have to say, I think Alliance quest lines are better in vanilla, whereas in later expansions I've tended to prefer Horde quest lines. And at endgame, you'll be asking for blessings instead of totems. There are some things that you'll hate. If you play a rogue, you'll learn to hate orcs. Or if you play a warlock, you'll learn to hate undead. You'll quickly get used to how irritating purge spam is. Horde deals with similar things, the lack of fear ward, the clear, if somewhat boring, power of blessings, the unkillable nature of a paladin healer, and blessing of freedom. The grass really isn't greener, except for the quests and dead mines being easier to get to, but it is different. It's still the same game, just under a different coat of paint. You won't struggle to enjoy the game because of your faction, but you might miss the old colours. Next we have this post from user Shinepale, who added the following. I think that Alliance's proximity to Blackrock Mountain makes the end game a lot better. As for leveling, my two favourite 1 to 30 paths are the Night Elf and Human ones. Undead starting zones are nightmare mode. Lots more running, worse flight path locations, many mobs that heal, and you get to Hillsbrad at 30, when Alliance is going there at 35 to 40 for Arathi. Orc and Troll is pretty good. Tauren is boring with lots of running. Dwarf and Gnome is kind of a bit of running, but still good, and you can hop onto the tram to switch over to the human zones pretty easily if you want to skip Loch Modan nightmares. All in all, I give Alliance a slight edge here as well. For later leveling though, I prefer Horde. Possibly Desolus, and then obviously leading into Thousand Needles, into Feralus, into Tanarus, into Ungoro, into Western Plaguelands, Eastern Plaguelands, Silithus is still a very smooth way to spend your last 25 levels. Alliance usually steers more towards Searing Gorge, Blasted Lands, etc., which just don't feel like they're as good to level in. Plus, you would think Swamp of Sorrows would be their zone, but Horde NPCs will sneak up and wreck you. Now, with those posts being done, obviously there are a number of considerations that fly through one's mind when we stare at that character creation screen wondering which faction we shall pledge our undying allegiance to. Are you a noble soul who believes that you're fighting for justice and righteousness with the Alliance? Or do you like to take a bit of a walk on the wild side and impetuously crush skulls with the supposedly barbaric Horde? Whichever you choose to roll with, you'll be getting a somewhat different experience in the game than people who choose the opposite faction. Those differences are numerous, being things like the leveling experience, access to zones, which capital cities you'll spend time in, what your mounts look like, the PvP experience, racial abilities, and so on and so on. The two posts I just read out raised a few issues that mainly revolve around the leveling differences between the two factions, which is where we'll start. But first and foremost, Undoer's post begins with this. We are the same people. Whether you choose Horde or Alliance, we're all WoW fans at the end of the day. There's not a huge discrepancy in the types of personalities that are drawn to one faction over the other. So no one really needs to worry about one side being nastier than the other, or more skilled than the other, or anything like that. And I can hear all you Horde players guffawing right now, but settle down. But a nice question to ponder with vanilla leveling is this. Wherever you happen to get your WoW fix now, do you find yourself constantly returning to the same faction? Are you Horde for life or Alliance to the death? Or do you mix it up a bit? Personally, I've always leaned Alliance. I like inherently good characters, but I am making the switch to Horde for Classic, so this topic is actually quite interesting to me. I've only really known Alliance quests for the most part when leveling. I didn't go through the magic of running around like a fool wondering where Mancrick's wife was. I didn't experience Baron's chat for the most part, but I'm looking forward to having all these things unveiled as an almost new experience to me with Classic. I can't wait to learn to hate humans and face melt a night elf that looked just like my former self in the game. Is questing to 60 as an Alliance player a slightly more fun or enjoyable experience? Or is it the case that nothing is better, simply just different? Are there more faction-friendly zones that you prefer and will affect your rolling a faction accordingly? There are obvious issues like location with capital cities and their proximity to certain zones or instances. Some people love that as an Alliance player it's relatively convenient to get to Blackrock Mountain. But does it really matter in the end when choosing based on something like that when you'll be playing for so long and doing so many other things? From the little horde leveling that I've done, I didn't find that I was noticeably enjoying myself more, except when in the undead starting zone, because it floats my boat on the dark and gloomy side of things. And on that note, I will actually tragically miss Duskwood now that I won't be rolling Alliance, and that really does break my heart a little bit. But I guess I could still visit as a tourist to try my hands at a little world PvP. Oh, and controversial opinion alert, the Barrens doesn't really do it for me as a zone, and it will be tough for me to dismiss the familiar allure of the Alliance. How much does this familiar feeling and aesthetics and convenience play into your decision? Write to the show and let me know if you agree with anything I've said at feedback@countdowntoclassic.com. Undoer's post touched on racial abilities as well, so this will be the only time I'll say this on Countdown to Classic, but let's get racial now as we start with the following two posts. And firstly, this one from Co's Dear Care, who says this: let's talk about the racials in WoW Classic. The elephant in the room during WoW's early years has always been that Horde dominate in PvP. To me, it seems pretty obvious that most people that want to focus on PvP choose Horde for the racials. The two best classes for just straight up dominating in PvP are rogues and mages. Undead is by far the best race for both of them. 25% stun resistance for orcs is ridiculous as well. Shadow Priest is another OP class in vanilla. Guess why? Because Devouring Plague and Undead. I could go on. My point is, the racials and priest abilities seem to funnel most of the PvE players over to Alliance, and most of the PvP players over to Horde. It seems like this should be looked at, to be honest. I think the game would benefit a lot from it. Next, this one from Smelly Buttocks, now who can be nominated for Countdown to Classic's Handle Hall of Fame. But they say the following: Alliance can definitely hold their own in PvP. Just because a lot of people roll Undead Mage or whatever to be Vertney doesn't mean that they are overpowered. Perception on a properly scripted server, Stoneform, and Escape Artists are all very strong racials if coupled with the right class. And Fear Ward is insane too. Just because some Undead Rogue is camping you in Stranglethorn Vale doesn't mean they're dominating anything. In a fair PvP setting, perhaps pre-made versus pre-made, for example, with players of similar skill, I'd put my money on the Alliance team, actually. So these posts raise the issue of differences in racial abilities between the two factions and whether or not one is indeed clearly a winner. The prevailing theory is that the Horde have been well and truly looked after by Blizzard through the initial development process when it comes to racials. Was there a Horde bias here? When you stack up Warstomp, Blood Fury, and, the one, the only Will of the Forsaken against Escape Artist, Stoneform, and Perception? Really? Is there much of an argument? Well, despite the assertion from the first post that it's not even a question, the second post raises an interesting point. Perhaps, 1, the Alliance's racials aren't too shabby after all when in the hands of the right players. At the end of the day, it's the person that's going to determine who lives and who dies in the game, not the racials available at the end of the day. And anyway, as much as I understand that popping off a timely racial can turn the tide of a battle, it's not like racials are on a 5-second cooldown or anything, right? We talk about things like min-maxing in PvE, and there are obvious class and race combinations that certain players will follow like a religion. Want to be the best priest you can possibly be? Better roll dwarf. Gunning to be the best mage you can be? Better roll gnome. Or so I hear. Do racials push your choices for factions on their own? Will that get you rolling the opposite faction this time around? Perhaps because you felt you did it wrong last time around. Anyway, there's one other pretty big difference between the two factions that I haven't touched on yet that is certainly the proverbial elephant in the room. Faction-specific classes. The great Paladin versus Shaman debate of November 04 to January 07. Which was quote-unquote better? Will going back in time to an era where not everyone had access to these classes have you changing team colours for Classic? Well, for this topic, I'll take us to an excerpt from an August 2013 article over at Engadget.com titled, "When Blizzard Hated the Horde," and it goes as follows. WoW has always had a bigger focus on PvE, and in classic PvE, no one argued that paladins were the superior class. The basic mechanics of blessings worked better in PvE. Blessings lasted longer, and one paladin could buff the entire raid with one blessing. Totems, on the other hand, cost more mana than blessings and could only buff one party. Worse, they weren't mobile and could be killed by NPCs. Blessing of Kings was a great buff for tanks, and the Horde didn't have anything like it. The most coveted blessing, however, was Salvation. Salvation reduced players' threat, so healers and DPS could afford to heal more and do more damage. It made the entire raid more efficient. The Horde finally got a salvation effect late in Classic in patch 1.9. Tranquil Air Totem, however, shared a totem type with the one totem that most begged for a threat reduction, the bursty Wind Fury Totem, which originally gave players a chance to proc a triple melee attack. A player couldn't have both buffs at the same time unless his group had two Shamans. To add insult to insult, Blizzard made Tranquil Air 10% worse than Salvation, being 20% versus 30%. During WoW's era of fixing one class per patch, Paladins received a comprehensive overhaul in patch 1.9. Paladins received the much-welcomed greater blessings, making buffs that much easier to distribute. Shamans thought that they must be next, purely out of what remaining fairness Blizzard could muster up after Paladins had their overhaul first. Then 1.10 addressed priests instead. The lore behind this patch order is that Shamans were supposed to get an overhaul alongside Paladins in 1.9. Then Ionix, the community manager who was supposed to collate all the Shaman feedback, got very sick. Blizzard had to push back the Shaman fixes. Shamans had to wait 6 months after Paladins for their overhaul, and they had to share their patch with Mages. Mages got a bunch of buffs and fixes. Shamans didn't get the same apparent level of scrutiny. The enhancement and elemental trees were still very lackluster. Shamans still felt highly inadequate compared to Paladins. Community managers hadn't communicated much on the Shaman forums leading up to the patch, and Shamans felt that their concerns hadn't been taken seriously. The Shaman forums exploded with outrage and disbelief. One poster took his sentiments to a very bad, very dark place. He wrote that he wanted Ionix to get hit by a bus. Many echoed the sentiment. Thus the term bus shock was born. So that post does a really great job of breaking down what generally gets yelled about on classic forums everywhere. Both classes tend to be pigeonholed as healing/support classes, obviously. But can they do anything else? And is there much of a difference between the two? Surely Blizzard wouldn't make one blatantly better than the other, given that only half the player base would have access to it, right? Right? Well, starting with Shamans, we go through the stereotypes. Elemental Shamans, which we're about to break down in our very next topic, were PvP gods, but euphemistically described as not viable for much else outside of that. Enhancement Shamans, some say, sure, bring one to a raid if you want to be cute. If you've been dating hunters too long perhaps and you want to mix things up, then go for it. But outside of that, the spec does seem to get a resounding shrug of the shoulders and a bit of a meh from many forum posters. And as far as restoration goes, this is pretty much what you're going to be stuck with if you go high-end game. So get used to healing, kiddo, even if that isn't what you signed up for. But hey, totems! As for pallies, we know the drill. Holy equals good, ret equals bad, and prot is just another ugly four-letter word. Or so the forums would have you believe. Plus, pre-patch 1.9, a paladin would give you the greatest 5 minutes of your life, over and over again. But Josh, you say, you haven't sold us on either of these classes. Why would I switch factions for one of those broken classes that you just described? Well, no, people still loved these classes too, obviously. There's fun to be had with any class in World of Warcraft. It's up to the playstyle of the player. Plus, Shamans and Pallies provide amazing support to a group or a raid on the whole, and their intended utility is obvious, beyond simply being heal bots. But when you hear about the plight of the shaman, as described in the article, is it bleedingly obvious that Blizzard made paladins just a little bit better? Is this the most obvious example of a perceived alliance bias within the game? Have you been busting to play a paladin for the first time in Classic? Well, where else were there some differences between a Horde and Alliance? How about over at the Battlegrounds? And we start with this post from user Coolness, titled, "How are win ratios so heavily favoured for Horde in Battlegrounds in all but 2 Battlegrounds?" And that post goes on to say this: "I was looking up historical statistics recently, and I'm trying to piece together why the Horde have been dominating and why it's the case. I recently took a foray onto the Horde side and found many reasons, but they all seem to come down to one common reason. The Horde are just more enthusiastic about PvP. The gear seemed to be better. There was more concise and relevant communication, and there was a good amount of proper target focusing. I want to know what you think the reason is for the huge Horde bias in win ratios within Battlegrounds." User Konji replied to that post with this: "I am an Alliance player. I think it's a very interesting feedback loop. Alliance PvP have this expectation that things will go poorly, so the effort isn't on par with the Horde. I think we're quicker to forfeit or blame others. As a result of this, we lose more, perpetuating the expectation and results. Perception is reality." Then we hear from user MX Hazelnut with this post: "I think part of it is the Horde's stereotypical image as angry, tough, and vicious. That attracts people who are passionate about PvP, more than the Alliance's sort of noble, lawful image. After a while, the Horde got a reputation as the PvP faction, so that's where players went no matter what. Thanks to all that, Horde groups get confident that they're capable of winning. They're not inherently more organized, communicative, or skilled, but their confidence helps them feel more comfortable taking on leadership roles and asking for assistance with objectives. I've seen and participated in amazing alliance groups and PvP guilds, but Horde equivalent ones just seem to outnumber them. Map advantages play a part in a few Battlegrounds too, I think. Arathi Basin seems pretty Horde-favoured for one." Now that first post referenced some stats. And what were they, you might be asking, Josh? Well, over at MMO Champion, they conducted a study a few years back in retail, breaking down win ratios in Battlegrounds. This study poured over a crap load of data. This wasn't just one person doing 20 Battlegrounds and reporting back. This was done twice. First in February 2011, which returned the following results. Now, Warsong Gulch was 55-45 in favour of the Horde in terms of percentages, obviously. Arathi Basin was 56-44 for the Horde, and Alterac Valley was 51-49 in favour of the Alliance. The next time they conducted the same study was in January 2014, and the results became, at Warsong Gulch, 52-48 to the Horde, 60-40 again for the Horde at Arathi Basin, and over at Alterac Valley, things turned to an 80-20 swing in favour of the Alliance. Now, if you're into Battlegrounds, then maybe this is some data to pay attention to, combined with the assertions in the post that I read out earlier. There just always has been an overriding thought that the Horde and the players that it attracts are more skillful PvP players. And I base that statement on absolutely nothing. But seriously, from the moment I got into the game and started dabbling in Battlegrounds myself, it just felt that the Horde was seriously more skillful. Players would talk about them in town and say things like, "Man, why are we always getting steamrolled in Battlegrounds?" Now, granted, this could fluctuate from server to server. On your server, it may well have been the case that the Alliance dominated. But the point that I'm raising is that there was a perception that the nasty, dirty, filthy Horde just attracted cold-blooded, ruthless PvP players. Did Alliance players on the whole, not necessarily you Alliance PvP gods listening to this show, but the majority of the population, did they actually genuinely expect to lose battlegrounds, perhaps before they'd even started? And did it become somewhat of a self-fulfilling prophecy? Did the Horde really communicate better? Were there a lot of Loktar Ogars being furiously swapped during battlegrounds while Alliance players were spamming Ree? What was your experience? Also, there's the thought that some battlegrounds actually favoured certain factions due to their geography, and I believe that's something being touched on by an upcoming interview on the show, so stay tuned for that one. But is this a common misconception, or is there something to it? Graveyards, fence running, access to gold mines, etc., all that jazz. Was there another subtle hint of bias shown in Battlegrounds by Blizzard? And if so, would that influence you to switch up factions for Classic? Personally, I'm of the belief that even if there is a tiny advantage for certain factions at certain battlegrounds, then it still comes down to the skill levels of the players involved. A shitty group that doesn't communicate is still going to get rolled in spite of whatever minor legs up they may receive. But we move on now to zoning advantages with user Sryzon, who says this: the Horde has more opportunities to gank and less opportunities to be ganked. Menethil Harbour is in a contested zone. The Orgrimmar to Undercity Zeppelin is completely Horde controlled. Ratchet is in a Horde zone. Horde levels up to 30 in the Barrens, a Horde zone. The Alliance levels in contested zones as early as level 15, such as Red Ridge. This is my main reason for playing Horde. And next, user MW Highlander jumps on the pile with this one as well. One thing to be mentioned is because of the sheer size of the Barrens, you can go from level 1 to 25-ish, being entirely protected even inside a PvP server from ganking. It's only until you go to Hillsbrad and Thousand Needles that you experience PvP. And Thousand Needles is very much so Horde-dominated population-wise, aside from Shimmering Flats, which is early mid-30s. Alliance, on the other hand, Duskwood and Red Ridge are both contested territories and ripe for ganking. Horde only really need to be aware of Hillsbrad and Shimmering Flats, which are expected PvP hotspots. Alliance need to start dealing with relentless ganking from level 15 on. Also, Horde questing hubs are way better. You can level from 1 to 30 significantly quicker as a Horde. Much less territory travelling if you skip Stone Talon Mountains, which is awful for questing/levelling on either faction. And with those posts, it calls to mind the importance of safety first, perhaps. Or do you throw caution to the wind? If you're going to be playing on a PvP server, do you want to be watching your back more or less? Perhaps the Horde truly do have a bit of an advantage when it comes to world PvP and are given more opportunities to gank earlier and more often than the Alliance. Now, I've not leveled on a PvP server. Is this true? You tell me. I guess myself and a lot of other people going PvP for the first time are about to find out. Lucky I'm rolling Horde, perhaps. I'm not looking to sit in the Barrens, however, until level 25 or so, though, just to stay safe. Screw that. I'm going to throw caution to the wind, baby. And I'm going to go full Bart Scott on you here for a dated NFL reference. Can't wait. Anyway, what about those lovely capital cities that we all spend so much time in selling our stuff and dancing naked on mailboxes? There's a big difference there as well. So is that something to consider when deciding if it's time to switch up factions? User Salahadin over at the official forums tells us this. Stormwind. Simply epic. No other city compares to it. Ironforge. Great dwarven fortress. Darnassus. Really nice architecture and atmosphere. Orgrimmar. One big hellhole in the middle of a desert composed of tents, huts, and spikes. Thunderbluff. A bunch of tents on 4 cliffs. That central totem is cool though. It's kinda nice, but the whole place seems like a village or a giant camp rather than a city. Undercity. A stinky sewer. Why can't the Horde have nice things too? And this post throws the Horde architecture under the bus. Now, I'm sorry all you Horde players, but you might have to go grab your earmuffs for me here on this one, okay? Alright, is it just us Alliance vets now? Alright, listen up. I have to say, I totally agree with this post. The Horde cities absolutely suck in my opinion. Orgrimmar is cringeworthy to me. I hate it every time I walk in on a low-level alt. It's dusty, shabby, and gross. Undercity, I keep falling in the gunk, messing up my nice clothes, and always losing my bearings and forgetting which direction I need to head around the big circle in. And then at Thunderbluff, well, let's just say the less said about Thunderbluff, the better. Compare that to the majestic architecture of Stormwind, the tranquil beauty of Darnassus, or the sheer size and magnificence of Ironforge. Is this even a contest? Now, I'm being slightly tongue-in-cheek, of course. The Horde cities aren't without their charm either. I just haven't worked out what that charm might be. But to be fair, I guess many players do enjoy the thrown-together clan-like feel of Orgrimmar, a collection of races just trying to do the best they can. Undercity is pretty cool when you take the lore into account as well, and Thunderbluff is rustic. That's for you Simpsons fans listening. But outside of the aesthetics, do the positions of the capital cities do anything for you when deciding on who to go with for Classic? And we go back to the smelly buttocks with this post. Having played both factions, in my opinion, the layout heavily favours Horde. The Horde city or flight points in pretty much every contested zone is way better positioned than the alliances. Fellwood, Ferrelus, Stranglethorn Vale, Burning Steps, Stone Talon Mountain, Dust Wallow, you name it. Thousand Needles / Shimmering Flats, Swamp of Sorrows and Badlands. Alliance doesn't even have a flight path in any of these zones, lol. Only zones I'd say Alliance have a clear advantage in is Blasted Lands and Arathi Highlands, and they're shit zones anyways. Or at least Blasted Lands is. Also, capital positioning heavily favours Horde at 60. Darnassus is totally useless. Ironforge and Stormwind is close to Blackwing Lair, UBRS, Molten Core, Zolgarub, BRD. That's pretty cool, of course. But Thunderbluff is close to Diamol, Onyxia, and AQ. Undercity is close to Stratholme, Scholomance, and Nax. If I didn't think Pallies were superior to Shamans, I'd pick Horde over Alliance every single time. It's also no coincidence the fastest 1-60 record was from a Horde player. Even going at a more laid-back tempo, my 1-60 times on Horde tend to be faster, more streamlined, and less ganky. So maybe forget that access to Blackrock Mountain stuff at the start that we talked about for the Alliance. The Horde have plenty of cool geographical stuff too. Starting with awesome flight points and then leading into awesome proximity to a lot of high-end dungeon runs. P.S. You'll notice I've already wussed out and reverted to my former pronunciation of Scholomance. Peer pressure had me immediately ditch that Schoolermance freaky stuff from a couple of weeks ago that I tried out. And to be honest, I'm actually happier going back to how I used to say it. So welcome back, Scholomance. It's good to have you again. But anyway, I digress. It's an interesting note at the end of that post. Did you find yourself leveling faster on Horde or Alliance? You've obviously got things like Joanna's leveling guide, which uses Horde in order to power level from 1-60 the quickest. But was there an overall feeling among the player base that the Horde were quicker for the average player, who may not have been using the same tactics and certainly not power leveling? Let me know. Anyway, I'm going to finish up with this super long post from user Shidu. So please strap yourself in for the next 2 to 3 minutes on this one, people, but it's a really good one, so it's well worth it. And here we go. All these Blizzard Hearts Horde and alienates half the player base, pity me threads are mind-boggling. It's like none of you were Horde back in vanilla days, where you had things like the following. Number 1, lack of polish and far less detail. Look at old Orgrimmar. Now, look at old Stormwind. If you don't notice what I'm about to talk about, then you are blind. Stormwind is full of life. Kids chasing each other, bums in alleyways begging for coin, warlocks in a dank cellar away from prying eyes, mage towers with a teleporter, fancy castle area, the at the time amazing deep run tram. Each district looked different. A rare spawn canal beast popped up every now and then. There were tons of secrets and Easter eggs if you explored enough. Even Ironforge had way more life. Meanwhile, in old Orgrimmar, the streets were barren. No NPCs spoke, period. The inns were just orc buildings with some tables. Every district was indistinguishable from the other. It was, despite being the Horde capital, empty, desolate, boring. It wasn't until Cata that it was actually filled. Barrens and hinterlands had to be finished via patch. The Horde was missing its Wildhammer counterpart, and as for the Barrens, a patch had to be added to fill the completely empty farms and towers just sort of standing around. The patch notes describe it as giving the Barrens more life. And as a smaller note, yes, Horde got Southern Barrens to level on beyond level 20 without being flagged. Yes, it was also boring as hell, and most of the time leveling through it, I wished I was in a more compact and interesting zone, like Red Ridge. Before Ashara and the Forsaken taking Hillsbrad, the Alliance had 3 contested zones to level in, and 3 11 to 20 Alliance-controlled zones to the Horde's 0 and 2, respectively. Point number 2. Awful security from World PvP. For some reason, not only were Horde guards low level, but guard spawns were turned off for many zones. In places like Lakeshire, you'd get overrun by high-level guard spawns in moments if you tried to attack it alone. In Crossroads, the guards stay level 40, and the citizens don't seem to call for help much. Splinter Tree Post was often shut down by one level 60 Night Elf Druid standing on a tower. And then killing faction leaders gave a ton of honor, and the Alliance rejoiced. There were back doors to all 3 Horde cities that led directly to the faction leader, to the Alliance's 0. Even Darnassus required you to wait for a boat, giving the Alliance time to build up an opposition, then take a teleporter unmounted into the most well-guarded part of the city when you're on the other side. Raiding Ironforge was a complete no-go, since it was just as bad as Orgrimmar is today. Only instead of an achievement as a reward for killing Magni, you'd get insane amounts of honor. Meanwhile, Orgrimmar had a back door that looped around the least travelled parts of the city and ended at Thrall. At first, admittedly before the honour system was implemented, Thrall didn't even have any guards. The Corcron elite were patched in. Undercity had the sewer entrance that did the same thing, and Thunderbluff helpfully carried you up a lift to Cairn's backyard. Point number 3. Awkward story. Look at the old Onyxia keychain quests for Horde and Alliance. Just look at them. The Horde have one interesting part where they kill Rend and have his head impaled on a spike. That's it. Rend had little to nothing to do with Onyxia at all. And then it's a globe-trotting, go here, kill dragon, nightmare. And then there was finding Rexar twice. The Alliance, meanwhile, get an interesting story with Marshal Windsor and an unfazed event where anyone can witness Windsor walking to the throne room where Onyxia is revealed and attacks. It made me wonder why the Horde bothered with Onyxia at all. She didn't do anything to harm them, she only paid attention to the Alliance. This was the trend until Burning Crusade, where the Blood Elves got some story that tied into the raid bosses, and the Orcs had their Maghar and Magtheridon/Fell Orc plot. Wrath was all paladins, Silverhand, corrupted Alliance prince, and ex-Alliance hero to take him down. Cata finally reversed the trend, introducing a Shaman faction, whose leader appeared in the background once, and made Thrall, an orc, the main attraction. So what's the point? The point is, if Blizzard favoured one faction over another, which I doubt, they changed their minds. The Horde felt little more than a foil for the Alliance back then, due to their healthy distance from the plot. Cities that looked like and functioned more like raid instances for Alliance to play in than cities, and an overall feeling that the faction just wasn't finished yet. This is actually not saying that Blizzard hearts Alliance. It's saying that Blizzard hearts neither, or rather, both. And to say otherwise is to go against common sense and the history of the game. So please stop saying the Horde get a patch where they burn down Theramore and the Alliance get nothing, because that just makes me think of the days where that would be used to give the Alliance plot and sympathy and the Horde nothing. No one is favoured. Phew, what an epic post. That was a long one, but that's a great bit of food for thought to end that topic on. Maybe no one was favoured after all. Horde wasn't as amazing as people seem to remember, and the Alliance was far from perfect. Perhaps the moral of the story is this. Pick what you will to make the game the most fun it can be for you. If you're not a min-maxer, which many of us aren't, just listen to your heart. And roll an Australian. Anyway, time for the next topic. Each week on Countdown to Classic, we'll be weighing up the pros and cons of a specific spec. Now, try and say specific spec 10 times fast. Jeez, that's a bit of a task. But anyway, this week we turn to Elemental Shamans. Weighing up both sides of the argument, we'll try to hit on why Ele Shamans are awesome, and you should totally roll one. Then contrast that with why they're far from the best thing since sliced bread. My commentary will be relatively minimal as, spoiler alert, I haven't played an Elemental Shaman, or any kind of Shaman beyond about level 20 for that matter. Luckily, I've scoured some Shaman forum threads and found some of the better posts from people who are either experts or certainly talk the talk like one. So here we go with 3 posts in a row to start with, beginning with user Zarista Mona, who says the following. Geared Elemental Shamans in vanilla are at the top of the food chain in PvP. They literally have no counter and can decimate teams in a matter of seconds. Add to this the Orc Racial with the 25% stun resist chance and the male armor plus shield, plus the natural good HP pool of the class in vanilla, and you have a really resilient killer in PvP. In my opinion, they're up there with Shadow Priests and really geared Locks. However, they suck in PvE, and they need very good gear to be good. But God, it's fun and satisfying to play. Also, hybrid Resto Shamans are just too good to pass up in PvP with all their utility. No, really, Shamans are just a great choice in vanilla in general. Next we have this post from user Gandler, who says this. Elemental may not be the most viable PvE spec, but goddamn it is satisfying in PvP. Frost Shock and your slowing totem combined with 1.5 second chain lightning can make hunters melt while you're in their dead zone, if you get the jump on them. Fire Nova totems draw melee in like flies, only for them to be blasted because they don't expect it to be talented. Lightning bolts can halve people's health before they even notice you with 11% base crit chance and plus 100% crit damage, and Purge plus proper use of Earthshock is a paladin's worst nightmare. Warriors can tear through you like tissue paper thanks to hamstring though, but you have increased lightning range so you can snipe them from a distance if they're distracted. Warlocks, however, are your worst nightmare thanks to how unreliable Tremor Totem can be. Biggest issue is how fast you burn mana, but you can pump out some serious burst damage before you're out of mana. In PvE, you're an aggro magnet that's able to lay down a massive chunk of damage for about 30 seconds to a minute, but then you're useless. You're able to heal as Elemental for most of the grind to 60 though, and with enough water and pots, it's by far the most entertaining chamois spec for leveling from 39 onward, and doable from the beginning if you don't mind more downtime than enhancement. I like that it's all about burst. Mages and warlocks can keep their sustained DPS. I take pride in being able to become a torrent of destruction for brief windows of time. Finally, we get this post from user MW Highlander again, who says this. Elemental is god tier PvP support / burst damage. Very good in one-on-ones when geared. Can global one-shot most players with specific trinkets. The Zolgarub gear set is very strong for Elemental and even gives a +5 range bonus to lightning spells, giving Chain Lightning a 41-yard reach. Many PvP groups consider them essential for their long-range burst damage and constant purge spam to take away OP paladin buffs, especially in Warsong Gulch. Now, with all of those posts out of the way, are you noticing somewhat of a trend here? Do you want to be a PvP god? Is melting faces going to become a full-time job for you? And please don't email me anyone who works at a crematorium saying, Josh, I already melt faces professionally. But the point is, maybe an Elemental Shaman is for you. If PvP is about to become a huge focus for you in Classic, then put this class and spec on your shortlist. Not that the size of your list matters, but does the thought of being a Thor-esque lightning-wielding god sing to you? The consensus very much so is that Elemental Shamans run riot through PvP. So take that info and do what you will with it. However, what else do we need to know about them? How about PvE leveling? How do they fare in that regard? Well, we'll get to these posts. Firstly with Iron Maiden 667, who says the following. I'd actually recommend a hybrid. It's a little easier than full elemental. You use a fast attack speed dagger with flame tongue weapon. Next, we have user Fanboy, who concurs when they say this. Finally, someone who gets it. I fully recommend this as a fantastic leveling spec. By the way, Eye of the Storm with the /sit plus shock macro make you take 0 pushback as default, and with the shield, the crits are not at all a problem. In my opinion, this way of leveling is generally underrated, since as long as you start your melee swings before casting Lightning Bolt, and as long as the attack speed is faster than your Lightning Bolt, you will get both the weapon auto swing damage and the Lightning Bolt damage every time you cast a Lightning Bolt. Keep your shield and your flame tongue up, and leveling Chamois is an enjoyable breeze. On a side note, Elemental is the face melter in World PvP, so what I usually do is respec full Ellie at level 39 for the casting speed, then go back into Enhance like described in the above post. Basically, this makes you close to unbeatable in one-on-one in World PvP while leveling. I also always skill engineering while leveling because it really complements the holes that the class and the spec have. At 60, I respec into the unbeatable 30/0/21 spec and spend my days ganking outside of Blackrock Mountain while eating cheese doodles with one hand and holding my dick with the other. Enjoy. Oh, how crude. Come on, poster, you're killing me. Anyway, the pro tip seems to be don't go too nuts with the elemental talent points while leveling. I found a fair few posts that seem to think that a nice little even balance between elemental and enhancement talent points was the way to go. And that all sounds pretty cool. But what's so bad about going full elemental? Well, user WepWeWet over at the Vanilla Shaman Discord server says this. It's not even that the spec was weak in early levels. It more or less boils down to a problem of itemization. You will not really find flat spell damage items until like 30-ish or 40-ish. It's mostly shadow spell damage, frost damage, and so on. Good luck finding nature spell damage items that have other useful stats. There's spellcasting leather and more, so mail is barely existent. You're forced to wear cloth, and you're lacking the melee damage mitigation tools the original cloth casters have, be it Fear, Frost Shield, Pre-Shield, so that's hurting you twice. Leveling a shaman in vanilla definitely is a pain. I've described the least painful way, at least for me, in the enhancement section. I think from around 40 onwards, you can definitely give a full elemental spec a try. We move on to the next post with user Masturbate, and that's with the number 8, another Hall of Fame handle nominee. And they decide to get their hands dirty with this post. Elemental is strong on paper in vanilla, even for PvE, but does not deliver. Their individual damage and talents are very nice. Tons of crit, nice base damage, decent damage scaling with spell power, uses different loot than Clothies. Again, on paper, Elemental is a nice spec for PvE. Here's the reason they're actually bad for PvE. They don't benefit from any curse of elements /shadow, meaning bosses take less damage from them. On top of that, that, most bosses in vanilla have high nature resistance, which is why the few Oomkins that exist never use Wrath. On top of that, there is very little male spell power gear, meaning they take gear from better cloth DPSs, at a pretty quick out of mana that comes faster than mages and warlocks. On top of that, there are a substantial part of mobs that are immune to nature, meaning elementals become subpar healers on those fights. So what looked good on paper is now low damage, low mana efficiency, no real gear distribution advantage. As someone who loves Elemental, it saddens me to say. However, in PvP, you'll have tons of fun. Tons of fun. And with that post, it sounds like if I'm considering an Elemental Shaman, I had better be prepared for a few bumps in the road during the journey to 60. I might have to spend some time with the good old talent calculator with this one. And maybe that enhancement/elemental mix is really the best option for leveling. But Josh, you ask, why haven't you talked about itemization yet? Well, hold your horses, we're getting there with the following post, starting with user Golden Arc. Back in the day, it was common for balanced druids to wear cloth to max spell power/starfire crits. Was this also done by elemental shamans? Obviously, they would become glass cannons, but one-shot chain lightning crits would be worth it. Looking for constructive feedback as I plan my tune. Then we get user Kragan with this post. There's very little decent male spell power gear in vanilla. You got things like the chest from Zolgarub, Molten Core nature damage shoulders, AQ legs, and later some Nax trash drops. Thinking back at my time as an elemental shaman during vanilla, I never tried to DPS in raids besides Razor Gore, and generally trash in Blackwing Lair. But because of DKP and me having a damn near 100% attendance, I managed to snag most of what is considered best in slot cloth items today in my day as a shaman. I honestly can't tell you if it will be viable for raids, but god damn it was fun being an elemental shaman with 600 plus spell damage to lightning bolt and chain lightning. Then we have user Jakubov, who comes in with a finishing blow on the matter, as they say, with this post. You can only really use cloth gear for PvE, and almost nobody raids as elemental in a DPS role. In PvP, you need to wear mail in order to survive against melee classes and hunters. You could get away with wearing, say, the Warsong Gulch cloth wrists, but you have to have mail in the slots with high base armor. Shamans don't generally get extremely high spell power. Their gear leans toward crit instead, which suits the elemental spec pretty well. The PvP set is fairly good, except for a couple of pieces that aren't itemized for spell DPS, and some of the tier 1 and tier 2 pieces are good for elemental as well. You're rarely going to one-shot anybody in good gear with chain lightning no matter what, but you can set up some fairly insta-gibby bursts. Insta-gibby, is that a word? Anyway, we'll carry on. You don't need to wear cloth to do that. The class doesn't have the defensive mechanics to be a glass cannon, so you have to be able to take some hits. To give an example of very obtainable early elemental shaman gear, we have the following. PvP, Bloodguard's Mailwalkers, Mindfang, and Advisor's Rings. Tier 1, Earth Fury Gauntlets, Vestments, and Braces. Tier 2, helmet and leg plates of 10 Storms, both available from Blackwing Lair. And then there's the Deep Earth Spaulders from Molten Core, Orb of the Dark Moon from Dark Moon Fair, and Eye of the Beast, a quest trinket. You can basically get a full set of serviceable elemental gear without even having to raid Blackwing Lair, and without needing to wear cloth or spend huge DKP on the uber competitive mage/lock drops. This lets you be a healer in raids and still have gear for PvPing as elemental. You won't realistically be able to get stuff like Choker of the Fire Lord when raiding as a healer, at least not until it's old content and all the DPS casters already have it. If you do raid Blackwing Lair, a lot of the Tier 2 set is also hybrid gear and perfectly usable as elemental. Plus there's an amazing weapon, being Lo Amir Ilromathus, which drops from Nefarian that isn't very highly contested because the only classes that use it are priests, druids, and shamans, and druid is the least played class while priests will usually have benediction by then. Well, that post was incredibly informative, wasn't it? Perhaps I'm crudely summing it up, but the mantra seems to be, endgame PvE, it's cloth for thee, but with PvP, then mail sets you free. Or something like that. However, it's notable that the posts do say that elemental shamans really won't be getting many invites to raids, so they're probably more talking about resto there, I'm guessing, in terms of wearing cloth for PvE. But that could still apply for ranged DPS as an elemental shaman if you find a guild who will roll with you in high-end content. But next, Josh, you're screaming by now. What about rotations? What do I do? Well, we turn to more shaman gurus, beginning with user Definitely Not Atheist for that one, who says the following. Pretty much the entire shaman leveling experience is either use Wind Fury and auto-attack everything to death, or use Flame Tongue and auto-attack everything to death. I find the reduced mana cost and clear casting talents in Elemental help you shock more often for less, and are helpful for more mobs per drink. Plus, leveling Elemental lets you heal dungeons just fine because you'll already have intelligence and spirit gear. We go back again to prolific poster MW Highlander, who says this. The biggest problem with Elemental is that you essentially only have 2 spells. 2. Shocks and Lightning Bolt, one of which has a 6-second cooldown until you put skill points into making it only 5. The other is a 3-second cast you can't use when getting attacked by more than one mob. The lightning spells can be reduced down to 2 seconds, 1.5 for chain lightning, but high mana costs, after level 35, which is brutal. While you can do it, it's just a pain in the ass. Shamans outside of totems for utility have the fewest actual usable skills in the game. 0 melee abilities until level 40 purely as enhance, and 2 spells which are a pain to use until spec'd into them late game. Simply put, you're going to suffer until your mid-30s, and then you're really going to need some super strong gear to shine. I can't ever suggest leveling as elemental outside of group play. It's just not a fun time to be had. This is also why there are so few shamans in the 19 and 29 twink brackets. They just don't have the tools they need to be effective. Wind Fury at level 30 and Chain Lightning plus relevant casting nodes at mid-30s in Elemental. Even Purge only removes 1 buff until level 30. Now I might suggest leveling as enhancement with Elemental spell power gear. Having intelligence for a huge mana pool with plenty of plus nature spell damage makes leveling quite nice. Wind Fury on a staff or two-handed mace or axe with Storm Strike is pretty solid to level, on top of the spell power on Earth Shock getting buffed up by Storm Strike. Alternatively, once you're past your mid-30s, you can do full elemental spec with Wind Fury on a staff. Still does a crap ton of damage without needing the two-handed melee weapon node. And wow, that post is really talking up this Elemental Shaman experience, people. I like it. To be fair, I really enjoyed leveling as an Ellie Shaman myself, the time that I took 1 to 20 or so. So obviously the ongoing theme is still going to be do what you have fun with. But these are things to perhaps brace yourself for during the experience. And speaking of experiences, one of the greatest experiences that you can have in vanilla is endgame raiding. Or so I'm told. I've just seen videos. But how do elemental shamans really go in raids? What's the story, Josh? Well, don't ask me. Ask user Treasure33333, who says this. They are good for everything but raiding. You can still do raiding if people are willing to take you. Having enhancement in a raid has its pluses, but it isn't that good. Also, some people will be biased towards you because of stereotypes, so be ready for that. So establish relationships with people, make friends, recommend yourself as a good, reliable player, and you'll make it. Get Nightfall. Though it's much easier to go healing for raids. For easier raids or pickup groups, you can heal in enhancement spec. You don't need to change your spec even. Onyxia, Molten Core, just have a proper healing set of gear, healing enchants, and everything, and it's fine. You'll do your job. For harder, higher tier raids, you'll need to respec to restoration. Next we have user Kebab Man Dog, who chimes in as well with this addition. As far as the meme PvE specs go, I'm afraid Elemental is bottom of the barrel, so kind of weakest of the already weak. Because they go out of mana quicker than any other spellcaster, and raid mobs / bosses have high nature resistance compared to Shadow, Frost and Fire, etc., which is reduced through curses. Also, they bring absolutely zero utility that a Resto couldn't bring, unlike, say, Balanced Druids, which at least bring a unique spell crit percentage aura. From what I've heard though, Elemental can do decent in AQ and beyond when the reduces the magical resistance of your opponents by X type of gear starts appearing, plus items with a mix of spell damage and MP per 5 / intelligence, etc. Good luck, and I hope you can make it work. Well, ain't that a kick in the pants? With those posts, they're basically telling me, well, hey, I mean, I wanted to raid. I just spent 250 hours on this character, and now Blizzard, well, they took my job. Anyway, wow, that won't make any sense to people who don't watch South Park. But I was looking forward to raiding Blizzard. What gives? Certainly there are certain classes and specs that have generally been deemed by the vanilla community to be viable in raids, and then there's another category which is classified as, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, dog shit. But just be prepared that you may not be the belle of the ball when it comes to endgame raiding as an Elemental Shaman. However, don't stress, because maybe it's not all doom and gloom, as user Tricky Tickler tells us. I mained Elemental Shaman in vanilla, still do on retail. When Classic comes, I will go back to maining it in vanilla and probably say goodbye to retail forever. Elemental Shaman as a spec is better on retail, but Classic is a game I'll enjoy more. We had some serious problems, of course, but you could easily hold your own as a DPS in raids if you bothered to farm runes and such. Being out of mana after 13 lightning bolts is pretty damning in a raid scenario. Still valuable because of totems though. Any raid group that isn't total bleeding edge will probably take you. I raided casually on Nost with Elemental Shaman without any problem. You have tons of utility and many interesting spells and abilities that are situationally useful in most aspects of the game. My personal endgame content for Classic will be to PvP, complete and upgrade my dungeon set, 5 Thunder sets look so amazing, it's my favourite ever I think, max out my professions, herbalism and alchemy, and get my epic mount. I'll probably do some Onyxia runs or something, but I just want to do Battlegrounds, do world PvP and help guildies through my favourite dungeons. Even though Elemental Shaman isn't optimal, it still has its place. I enjoy the class fantasy and all the spells so much that I just get immersed in my character and the world I'm inhabiting. The guides already posted are very sufficient, and I probably am not the best Elemental Shaman in the world, but in my opinion, being adept at Elemental Shaman in a raid scenario means having your niche abilities ready to go at a moment's notice. I've saved wipes from healer/tank fuck-ups with shrewd uses of Stoneclaw totems, for example, that gave the mages time to Frost Nova and control trash. Tremor Totem is incredibly useful, and Wind Fury Totem makes melee DPS love you. A lot of this is not specific to Elemental, but having a good grasp on Shaman as a class and not Elemental the spec will get you very far. Your DPS rotation will be mostly lightning bolt spam, and if you're going to be up on the meters, you probably need alchemy and to farm a lot of runes to pot up and restore mana. Anticipation is a little key to whether or not you can go completely out of mana, since having Stoneclaw, Tremor, Poison, Cleanse and so on ready to go will be important. When it comes to gearing, I've never cared for pre-raid best in slot, since I was never hardcore like that and my casual guild didn't care, but getting pre-raid best in slot off a guide will net you the best chance possible to get a spot for progression. Some will only take Resto Shamans though, because it's by far and wide the better Shaman spec for raids. Since most Elemental Shamans go somewhat into the Resto tree, you'll be a handy off healer if the healers are undergeared or just not up to the task. So that will be a handy tool in your belt as well. Mechanics and rotations on their own are neither complex nor hard, but situational totems, anticipation, and resource management will get you very far. And as I've said, farming, alchemy, and preferably cooking for well-fed bonuses to edge your stats as high as they can be will be beneficial. Next, we have user treasure 33333 again jumping on the dog pile with this conclusion. Make good friends so they take you to raids. Otherwise, no matter how hard you try and your actual DPS, people will always despise you PvE-wise because of stereotypes. And it will be frustrating as you spend hours theory crafting, finding ways to make it work, ton of effort getting all the consumable and all the right gear, and still no one takes you to raids and pick-up groups because lol. So you make friends and connections. That's what you need to raid as an elemental and even to do 5-mans. Everything else comes second. So just like at the end of it, friendship wins out at the end of the day. Doesn't that make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside? But seriously, that is a great summation. Just do what you want. That's going to be a running theme here at Countdown to Classic. Make some friends, you'll find the right people to do what you want to do. But anyway, we'll break down all these specs and have post after post saying don't do this and don't do that. At the end of the day, if you enjoy it, love will find a way. Anyway, now that everyone is feeling positive again about the world, let's move on to the third topic of the week, ninja looting. So you might say, Josh, I'm the person who listens to your podcast who hasn't played an MMO and doesn't know what ninja looting is. There are playable ninjas in World of Warcraft. Oh, and by the way, there are actually people out there who listen to this show who don't play MMOs. I've heard from them, so don't guffaw too much. But for their benefit, here we go with the definition, as per WoW Wiki, of a ninja looter, aka the bane of everyone's existence. A loot ninja, also known as ninja looter or simply ninja, is a player who takes loot to which he or she is not entitled. The act is referred to as ninja looting or ninjaing. The term predates World of Warcraft and originated with the notion of looting as quickly as possible. The common synonym for this behavior is greeder, though that term has ironically fairer play connotations specific to World of Warcraft. Now, they come up in particular circumstances, such as the following. 1. A player who, when in a group, rolls need on everything regardless if he or she can actually use it. 2. A player who, when in a group, rolls need on a bind on equip recipe for a character they're not currently playing. 3. A player who rolls on a bind on pickup item that everyone else has passed on, or a player who loots a corpse without permission after everyone has passed on a bind on pickup item. Or a player who loots a chest or harvests a resource while another player is fighting the mobs which were defending it, possibly using stealth or a dash ability to aid in this. 4. A party or raid leader who changes the looting system to master loot near the end of a boss kill and steals the loot off of a corpse without letting other players roll for the items. And 5. Note that in vanilla private servers, the definition is actually different. Since a lot of bind on equip items are valuable, it is the general rule to roll need on such items regardless if it's an upgrade for someone in the group. Now, on that last point, I wondered, private server players, please do tell me if that's actually true. But anyway, some of you might be scratching your head and saying, hang on, Josh, you usually cover both sides of an argument or the pros and cons of something. What the hell are the pros of ninja looting? Well, listen up to forum user Yassad over at the official forums with this interesting take. Ninja looting used to be a cool part of the game. It made people more social, since getting a pickup group or inviting some randoms to your guild run ran the risk of getting ninja looted. Today, this is mostly irrelevant due to the loot system as well as RDF taking over. When classic WoW releases, this drama will be resurrected. I can't wait. Now consider this crazy notion for a second with that post. Ninja looters aren't the heroes we deserve, but the ones we do need right now. I know what you're saying. Josh, have you lost your fucking mind? They can all die in a fire as far as I'm concerned. However, what did ninja looting promote? Social skills. All of a sudden, you kind of had to be nice and chat with people in order to perhaps secure a pickup group. People are wary of the unknown, particularly where ninja looting happens. And if you're unknown, why not at least be nice so perhaps the guard gets dropped? And then you ninja loot them. No, I kid. I swear I never ninja'd anything in the game. But I do agree with the point that ninja looters were obviously generally ostracized by the community when people were aware of who they were. Did you keep a people to kill list like Steve Buscemi and Billy Madison after being the victim of a ninja looter? I remember standing in Stormwind, usually at the auction house flipping stuff, and enjoying seeing the yells come over trade or general chat. Mr. Buttons is a filthy ninja looter. Never group with them under any circumstances. And I miss that fun little drama. But it was a cool little part of the game because it stopped us from being quiet, robotic players while grouping with others, lest the strong silent type be tagged as the potential ninja of the group. Anyway, now we go over to one of the many negatives of ninja looting with user Vanilla FTW, who says this. There will be a ton of griefers on the classic server when it goes live. We already expected that to happen, but the most beautiful thing will be that they won't make it far. They'll all be added on people's ignore lists and unable to find a group anymore. I really can't wait either. Now, unfortunately, if we want the full vanilla experience, it will come with all new ninja looters and griefers. People will do it for shits and gigs and literally laugh it off as vanilla means vanilla. Sure, we're more mature now, and the player base of Classic will generally be a touch older than retail, I'm positive. But adding a few years in age doesn't necessarily cure being an arsehole. Trust me, I know a lot of arseholes over the age of 30. Despite the fact that we can combat the issue via /ignoring and creating a people to kill list, of course, the flood of fuckwits is coming with vanilla. Perhaps you are not prepared. Hanging out for Assassin's Blade or Shadowfang for this rogue twink that you're putting through its first Shadowfang keep run? Loving how smooth the run has gone with your seemingly nice little group? Just wait until you somehow see it drop and that priest needs on it for the twink that they're now planning on starting. But we move back now to the positives with user Drazum, who says this. I'm at a loss as to how we as the community are supposed to deal with lowlives that ninja loot. Last week a friend of mine was in a pickup group trash run where the loot rules were stated to be main spec before off spec, with the master looter supposedly keeping things fair. My friend made sure that the loot rules were shared when they joined. Eventually a cloak dropped that the master looter gave to themselves and quit the raid group. After submitting a ticket to Blizzard, the response was essentially, tough luck, we can't do anything. And when they posted about it on the forum, my friend got a forum suspension. This almost seems like Blizzard is condoning this behavior. With these kind of results, I don't see what's to stop anyone from ninja looting stuff, as they'll see no repercussions and anyone that tries to spread the word about them will end up getting the ban. Following on from that post, we have this from user Rshot. The master looter can do whatever he wants with the loot. If there are very specific loot rules established, then the master looter or raid leader violates them. There may be a case for a scam. MS greater than OS, free rolls, or any variant of these are not considered specific enough. Blizz condones the players using the loot systems established in the game program. What you call ninja looting is not recognized by Blizz. Loot disputes, where a player disagrees with how another player distributed loot, are not handled by Blizz. Those are strictly player-to-player disagreements. Next, user Elemino chimes in with this. To answer your question, no, ninja looting is not okay. It was never okay. It's also in the raid leader's best interest to fully lay out loot rules prior to the raid, have them in chat for everyone to see, and make sure they're clear. It really shouldn't be a Blizzard issue. It's a player issue. And even then, it shouldn't be a player issue, since it's within our power to prevent the problems before they arise. So with those posts, you might say, what gives, Josh? How is any of what you just said a positive for ninja looting? Well, get a load of this. Blizzard doesn't care about it. Let me say that again. Blizzard doesn't care about it. I secretly love that there are things in the game that some might term as griefing or harassment that Blizzard has sneakily and correctly turned a blind eye to. Corpse camping, guild bank robbing, ninja looting, these are player issues, not game issues. The game isn't broken because these things can happen. I like that real-life societal issues can prop up their heads in a virtual world as well. Theft, fraud, dishonesty, bullying in terms of corpse camping. I'm kind of more than okay with these things being in the game. Now, in saying that, I'm not condoning actual verbal bullying, but corpse camping is a form of being a bit of a bully, if you follow me there. In real life, we have to have our guard up about these things. I love that it's no different in Azeroth. And as listener of the show and Countdown Council member Palfurus points out, Blizzard did actually ban forms of gambling in World of Warcraft, so they do draw the line somewhere, but that's a bit of a shame to me because I'd be all for gambling being allowed in the game and all the pitfalls that it could bring with it. But then I'm a gambler, so what do I know? At the end of the day, it's a positive that Blizzard allows us to police ourselves in the game and forge our own rules with our own virtual society. We have decided, within the bounds of the rules of the game and the terms of service, what is considered to be ruly and unruly behavior. We need ninja looters because they make us a stronger, more law-abiding online culture. They know they're breaking the unwritten laws, and they'll be policed accordingly by being called a shithead in trade chat. Anyway, back to the cons of ninja looting with this from user Myron Pigner. I would not like the ninjas to come back, but like other people mentioned, some classes need gear that is not intended to be for them. Changing the looting system might compromise the vanilla feeling most people want to experience. In this case, I would say keep the need before greed and pass/disenchant feature and install add-ons that keep track of all the ninjas, or only play with people you know you can trust. Next, we have this from user Azion, who says, I don't see why they couldn't add loot restriction to Classic. Then again, I see why people want it to be as close to vanilla as possible. But some people want bugs to be in Classic as well. And with those posts, we go with this. Sure, we want to stamp out ninjas, but geez, can you imagine using that add-on that they've proposed? That's basically the people to kill list that I was joking about earlier, but in add-on form. What's the proposition? That anyone could add anybody else's name to the add-on and put them on the list? Hey, Josh Corbett is a filthy ninja. Righto. But seriously, when we discuss changes versus no changes, funnily enough, this is the first time in all the posts I've read for the show, and I feel like it's been thousands at this point, that I've seen a suggestion or even an allusion to a change in the looting system. Granted, I'm sure this system is far from perfect that we have currently in vanilla, but I don't see many cries that it's inherently broken. I'm all for hearing someone out on changes, but I think this user may be barking up the wrong tree here. However, maybe you think the loot system could actually be tweaked to be a bit more fair, and I'm way off base. If so, send through your propositions to feedback@countdowntoclassic.com, and I'll read them out on the show. I know know that the loot system was revised slightly in later expansions, but I still don't think that there was much wrong with the vanilla system. As I've said, leave the responsibility with the players and let us sort it out and police ourselves. It works out for the most part anyway, I believe. But back to the positives with user Nostradamus, who says this. At this point, trade chat on most servers is either dead or it's some guild spamming their HFC carry. To liven things up, we should bring back ninja looting. There was nothing more enjoyable to see somebody nerd out after the item they won got taken away. It was normally a heroic trinket of some kind. Shout out to Deathbringer's Will and dislodged foreign object. If we could get that kind of trade chat interaction back, the game would be in a much better place and would bring the forums back. Also, why did the 3D gold advertising go away? Gold spammers now are just lazy. And how is this post positive, Josh, you might ask? Well, here's a little known secret about me. I love drama. I want to hear everyone's crazy stories about stuff that happened to them. I even want to experience a little myself from time to time. It sucks in the moment, but makes for a hell of a story afterwards. I want ninja looting, even if it costs me personally. Don't change anything. Yes, there will likely be a moment that I fall victim to it, but I still wouldn't change it for the world. It's part of the vanilla experience. At least that's what I'll say until someone robs me of my first epic. Hunters needing on everything? Yes, please. I secretly enjoy the arguments. I love seeing chat liven up with these kinds of moments. If it happens to your guild, it gives everyone something to talk about and bands together on for a short while. Absolutely give me the drama. But now that we've sort of gone through the pros and cons of ninja looting, how about a few other points, starting with this one from user G Snates, who says this. Despite what you might think, ninja looting is not really a big thing in vanilla. People know for the most part it's going to ruin their rep and future in World of Warcraft. Instead of ninja looting, it's more common to reserve some loot, or making a group of one cloth, one leather, one mail, and then plate to distribute loot fairly. If you bring 2 cloth, it will be 1 healer and 1 caster to split the loot that way. Ninja looting does occur sometimes, even if it rarely happens, but there's some positives to that also. Now you know to never group with them, and you can spread the word about the player. Because they've now ninja looted to save some time in a dungeon, they'll now have a very hard time finding players for further progress. Weed out the bad to get a better community. So the point there is that realistically, ninja looting is not a phenomenon that occurs overly often within the game. Perhaps not as rare as a lightning strike or a shark attack, but it most definitely does not happen every second dungeon run. As a community, we obviously collate all our stories, particularly at hubs such as forum sites, and the problem seems much worse than it is when all the awful stories are bundled together in one place. But it's far from something that is so prevalent in the game that it breaks things. The vast majority of players are inherently nice and aren't there to screw people over. We abide by the unwritten rules for the most part. I often equate ninja looting to waiting in a long line. Sure, there will be cutters, and the cutters may well get away with it, but they'll deal with some form of public backlash, and they can deal with that as they see fit. But my point is that line cutters are not a dime a dozen. When we create something as simple and orderly as a line, like I told you many weeks ago with my dalliance at the inn in Brill during an opening day, most people, pardon the pun, fall in line. I'll spare you the rimshot sound effect there, but anyway, how about other situations where ninja looting was quite prevalent? We hear from official forum user Kinetics on that one now with this. Pristine hide of the beast is a really obvious one. Also, there could be drama over the chromatically tempered sword, but usually hunters would defer to a sword rogue for the first drop, then it's game on, which is fair. In the guild I was in, I remember there was drama over Eskander's pelt, which dropped from Lord Kazakh. The player was a tank and he had one of the other 4 set drops already, so he wanted the cloak also. He didn't get it, so he guild quit. Any rare set drop like that could trigger drama. It happens, especially when there are 40 people present. The biggest drama I saw usually revolved around ninja looters, but special mention goes to stealing Molten Core raid IDs. The latter part happened at times after Blackwing Lair came out, where one of the top guilds would pug people to clear Molten Core all the way up to Ragnaros on their ults. Then the next day that guild would zone in on their mains to down him and get the tier 2 drops. Stealing the ID is where one of those people pugged is really an alt as well from another top guild, who's just there to get the raid ID, and then the next day his guild zones in on their mains to kill Rag before the other guild does. And there goes some massive forum drama as expected. And that post introduces another kind of ninja looter, the raid ID thief. Here's an explanation of what raid ID theft is if you're unsure, from user Dunsinane. When you kill a boss in a raid instance, you and everyone in the group is saved to the instance via a raid ID. This is announced in your chat box as you have been saved to this instance. It is meant to be a means of preventing you from chain running high-end content. You can check your raid IDs under the raid tab. It's on the same info screen as your friends list and guild list. If a raid is not completed in a single run, anyone in that group can return at a later date and pick up from where it left off. However, anything you do in there will affect everyone else in the group. For example, if you were part of a group that went to Karazhan and cleared to Curator, then you put together another group entirely to finish the rest of the instance the next day, anyone else in your group who went back after that would find the place empty. Stealing a raid instance usually involves an underhanded strategy of getting someone else's raid ID and then clearing the instance. One tactic would be to invite the person to a group, switch it to raid, and zone into the instance. You are now saved to the same raid ID that they were. Now, following on from that post, as most of you know, I was not a raider, so I never came across this, despite being aware of the issue. But it raises the interesting point of how far do we take ethics and values with World of Warcraft? Obviously, this depends on the makeup of the group that you're running with, but being a pickup group made up of non-guild members as well, theoretically, they've got as much of a claim as you do to the loot through the run. However, we as players have devised the unwritten rules that say, screw that, they know it's our guild's run, they know not to mess with it. But obviously, a line is harshly crossed when they log, steal an ID, and clear it with their own guild. I don't think there'll be much debate on that one. But here's what I would ask of all of you listening. I want people's most devastating or funny ninja loot stories. I would love to read some well-written dramatic moments on this show. Hit me up at feedback@countdowntoclassic.com. I'm even happy to maybe do a semi-regular segment on it if I get enough coming back to me. However, we move on, and raid ID theft didn't happen that often either, as user Taragor explains in this post. Ninja looting shouldn't be a bannable offense. It should just be something that the entire server ostracizes/blacklists you for. It may also cause you to get polymorph griefed and or spawn camped. Also, the only way your raid ID can be ninjaed is if either A, you get a pugged guy into the raid who lets other people in, B, someone with the raid ID G quits who lets other people in, C, someone in your guild with the raid ID let other people in, or D, a GM hates you or something, extremely unlikely. You likely had a traitor in your guild. So with that post, that basically explains how raid ID theft can happen. But be prepared, stay vigilant when Classic drops, people. Don't set yourself up for failure. Light bulb overhead moment here. Maybe starting a raid ID security consulting firm in the game would be a good bit of extra gold. But anyway, now that I'm brainstorming in-game business ideas, that's probably as good of a time as any to wrap up this week's epic forum and fauna with these last two posts about ninja looting and a couple of things to remember. First from user Dibulba, who says this: rule of thumb, run with people you trust. Make sure that Master Loot is active and not free for all. If somebody does ninja items, they'll be known for it amongst the community and essentially screw themselves. Blizzard will typically not punish ninja looters as they put it upon the community to loot responsibly. And finally, this post from user Hateful Face Licking. Man, there's been some all-time handles today. But Hateful Face Licking posted a helpful nugget of information in a post titled, Classic WoW is going to teach people why Master Looter was important. And with this post, well, I sung last week on the show, and none of you wrote to me saying that you hated it. In fact, some of you wrote to me saying that you enjoyed it. So, because of that, we get to this post, which said the following. I'm a little ninja, short and stout. I'll take the loot, then I'll Hearthstone out. All the people invent, all scream and shout, because I'm the rogue in full devout. Oh, I can't believe I sung 2 weeks in a row. There, are you happy, people? But anyway, that's been Forum and Fauna. But now with all those posts being done, it's now time for anger management. Each episode, Countdown to Classic reads out some of the angriest posts that I've found throughout the week in relation to the content that we've just covered. So, we start with this post, and it's actually an email from a listener of the show, Brian, who says the following. Hey Josh, you're a fucking asshole. You put out new podcasts every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Well, what about Tuesdays and Thursdays? What the fuck am I supposed to do on my 2+ hours of driving on those days? I can't believe that you don't care about my life any more than that. With that being said, if Classic WoW doesn't come out for another year plus, will you continue this podcast until it releases? Just a little FYI, if you don't, I will find you in Classic WoW and camp the fuck out of your rotting corpse. That's a promise. End anger management. I absolutely love the podcast and can't wait for every episode. You do a fantastic job. I love the episodes about past events like the Serenity Now funeral crash. I started playing WoW in late 2005, barely made it to max level before Burning Crusade came out. I can't wait to be able to play and experience everything Vanilla WoW has to offer. Keep up the good work, and thank you. And to that one I say no, Brian. Thank you. That one made me laugh a lot, and I really enjoyed it. And that's very anger management worthy, even if it was very tongue-in-cheek. But next we have this one from Discord member GR, who you might remember from his call to the show on the last episode. And GR says the following. I love the anger management portion of your show, so here's my contribution. I started playing WoW in high school shortly after the initial release and quit after hitting level 70 in Burning Crusade. Today, I volunteer as a community manager for one of the more well-known vanilla private servers. I just want to say that I'm sick and tired of all the armchair critics attacking both Blizzard and private server operators. Blizzard fucking created this game that we all love so much, and the private server operators are ensuring that you have a place to play while we all wait for the official classic to drop. Streamers who don't know the first thing about creating a great game experience should try operating a server for a while. I've never even heard of most of them, and they pretend that their petty 20,000 subscribers somehow give them the right to dictate terms to Blizzard. Dude, Blizzard built this game, and they have every right to make decisions as they see fit. If you and your followers don't like it, don't worry. Nobody will miss you. Next, we have this submission from Reddit user Asmo, who says this. I share Big Fisherino's annoyance with the people turning on a camera and a mic and rambling. That's always been a thing, but there are so many more since the announcement that it's watered down the average quality of WoW content from what it was a year ago, when Haven and Mad Season's scripted and edited videos were more front and center. Next, we go to the following posts, and actually it's the reply that I'm focusing on here, but I've got to read both to set the scene. So we begin with this post from WoW Classic official forum user Moredge, who says this: Elemental Shaman DPS is way too low. I keep getting kicked out of raid groups. Blizzard needs to double or triple the Elemental Shaman's DPS, especially single target. This is very discouraging. I'm seriously thinking of quitting the game because of this. And the anger management comes from this reply from user Humasha, who says this: You, sir, are a raging idiot. Period. No ifs or buts about it. You are a raging idiot. If you get kicked out of groups because of DPS and you need to blame the class to avoid looking at your sorry self and then get salty enough to come looking for a pity party here, then you're an idiot. That is all. Oh, and in before you come at me insulting my time played or whatever comes through your whiny skull, I've been playing Elemental for over a decade, even when everyone and their mum was playing Resto because, oh my god, Elemental is the suck. Next we have this submission from Discord member Borodin the Brave, who says this: If you're a fully raid-geared rogue who likes to kill freshly dinged 60s or lobby characters 10 times plus without remorse, fuck you. Is once or twice not enough, or is your self-esteem really that low? I get that it's part of the PvP experience, but there's a fine line between PvP and being a douche nozzle, and I feel like more and more people are crossing that fine line. There's a lot of people in the world of Warcraft who don't target the same person repeatedly. If you do, you're a douche nozzle, and there is a special place in hell for your kind. Fuck those people. Sorry for the rage, but it's been building up inside of me for months, maybe even longer. And I say, don't be sorry at all, Borodin. Thank you so much for sending that in, and to everyone who submitted a few anger managements lately. But with all that anger out of the way, we move on to winners and losers.
It wasn't going to be easy, but they've won it.
Each week, Countdown to Classic brings you some of the most insightful or funniest posts that I've come across in the forums through the week. So today I start with this one from user Sawyer M. Black. And just a bit of a warning, this is a little bit of a long one, so please do bear with me. But they're really good, and that's why they're getting read out in winners and losers. And Sawyer M. Black says the following about Horde and Alliance, which we touched on first in this episode with the following. I feel like when I'm playing Horde that I'm playing a faction who is bound by some kind of natural brotherhood and who's more in tune with nature. I'm not sure why. Probably just because of Shamans. When I play Alliance, I feel like I'm playing for an organized and highly governmental faction. Again, this could be influenced by the nature of the Paladin, but I actually think both things are influenced by the way each of the faction's cities are. I personally like Alliance more because the zones you play in as Alliance are so pretty and green. But sometimes you just want to be a badass undead or a huge tauren, and it makes it really hard to decide. I'm also undecided on which faction to play, so below I will attempt an examination for my own uses. Read it if you want to. My primary decision criteria will be based on the mood each faction puts me in, rather than the advantages or disadvantages of each faction. So, in essence, I will not min-max my faction unless it comes to Warlock. The mood a faction puts me in is almost entirely based on theme and design. Here are the following theme/design differences I can think of for factions. Mounts, cities, zones, race, visuals, music, storyline. Here we go. Mounts. Easily one of the most influential features of a race for me that largely changes which race I choose. If the Ivory Raptor is available for the first 5 months of Classic, I will have a huge dilemma in front of me. For Alliance, I love the Unarmored Tigers. I love the Gnome Mechanostriders. I think Rams are pretty cool. I hate horses. For Horde, Raptors are my all-time favorite mount. They just look far beyond every mount in the game. Wolves are cool. I'm neutral on Kodo and Skeleton skeletal horses, though. So far, this is undecided. Cities. Alliance cities are very organised, and it seems like a committee of the Alliance had to choose a skilled architect, perhaps the Stonemasons Guild, to design the cities. Alliance cities are very clean. Horde cities are thrown together. A band of orcs arrived and carved a rough hole out of the mountain and laid down for a nap. Everything from there happened on the fly. I choose Alliance cities. Zones. All the same about cities applies here, but natural elements take a role in zones additionally. Alliance zones are very green and clean, night elf and partially human, but at the same time, concern for nature probably isn't high on the list in dwarfs and gnomes. Horde has let the nature around them do as it pleases, and I feel like they care about it, but I still choose Alliance. Race visuals. Alliance gear makes them look like a very organised force. Horde looks like they riveted some metal together and are about to go wreck face. Alliance PvP set attempts to look glorious, but just ends up looking foolish instead with all the ugly gold. Horde PvP gear in vanilla is some of the best looking gear ever made for World of Warcraft, so Horde wins hands down. Music. Alliance has elements of military and glory with the human music, and sometimes of natural wonder with the night elf music. Horde is very tribal, and undead music is odd and hard to describe. Because I don't like human music at all, but all Horde music is neutral to my ears, I guess I'll choose Horde music. Storyline. I honestly don't give a damn about story, unfortunately. I really ignore everything about it, so I'll just base this answer off of which leader I love the best, which is Vol'jin of the Trolls. Without any real qualifications, Horde wins. As if I didn't see this coming a mile away, it looks like the only way to break my tie is either to be a Warlock or a Shaman, which defaults me to Horde, or decide on a mount. Okay. Now we move on to the next post from user Selenia, who says this about Elemental Shamans. The good old meme of mana being an issue is the least of an Elemental Shaman's concerns. Anybody raiding somewhat serious should and will farm consumables, and that's enough to keep your mana going, especially 10 plus years later where fights are more than halved in time. The biggest concern is the fact that you deal nature damage, and there's no way to reduce the nature resistance of mobs, with the exception of niche items early on in the game. Later on, Elemental Shamans start picking up steam in AQ, when they can find gear which baseline reduces all resistance by X amount. Second of all, Elemental Shamans do hurt, which is why they're desired in coordinated PvP. Their on-demand burst with Elemental Mastery and the high crit multiplier makes for some serious burst, but they do not have any threat reduction at all, partly because Tranquil Air Totem comes out in AQ, I believe, and even then you'll most likely be giving Wind Fury for people over it. Third, you're not bringing anything unique to the table like most if not all other hybrid specs do. Whatever totems you bring, a Resto Shaman could have provided as well. This is why Elemental Shamans are probably the least wanted of the hybrid specs. That being said, vanilla is much more about just having fun and getting gear so you can have even more fun. Yes, there are guilds trying to push for clear speeds or just trying to clear in a reasonable time, and depending on how hardcore they are, you might have trouble finding a spot in these guilds. You would have to sell yourself very well to get accepted if they would actually look past the typical lol, not a warrior, mage, rogue, warlock mentality. I know for a fact that I got into a hardcore PvE guild back when Elysium, now Light's Hope, launched by having a proper written application and sold them on my class. I applied as Feral Druid DPS. Most serious guilds, not pushing for insane clear times but still try to get shit done so people don't have to be logged out with raid buffs for multiple days, will take someone serious about their spec and class, writing a good application, being an overall friendly person, and does something for the guild over someone playing a warrior who never does shit other than raid log and barely is active within the guild. My best advice is, if you're going to pick up a niche/weird spec, be prepared and pour all of your energy and knowledge into performing well. By choosing something like Elemental Shaman, you're already labelled as a specific person. Prove to them that it's not just people not knowledgeable about the game picking these weird specs. Prove that there's decent people doing their homework picking these as well. Doing so might actually change the overall look on these specs, the very same way that feral druids are much more acceptable than they were 2 years ago. This is due to what I mentioned above. People actually doing their homework and know how to play. The reason why you rarely see these people is because they mostly choose a somewhat more accepted spec or class and do well on those. The fact that you'll have a hard time getting accepted is what keeps most people from playing them in PvE, even really good or hardcore people. Next we have this post from Matesel AT, who says this about ninja looting. Every weapon is a hunter weapon. And next we have this one from T. Calvel, who says this about ninja looting. Ninja looters / old-timey voice. In my day, we called those hunters. And this one is the loser of the week, because where there are winners, we must have a loser. And I've kept their name out of it to protect the innocent, so to speak. But they say the following. I just roll need on anything the shiny button lets me need. If it's useless to me, I just vendor it. Then again, I'm just role-playing though. And that's the loser post of the week. But I'll also finish up this segment with some comments from the Countdown to Classic Discord, where I often say to people, if you write something insightful there, it may well get picked up on and read out on the show. So here we go with the following users. Listen to this. And Countdown Council member 7 Winters says this. I'm conflicted if ninja looting will happen more often or less often in Classic. On one hand, in vanilla, people would often get blacklisted on their server if they ninja looted. But on the other hand, a lot of the systems that Blizzard implemented over time to make it harder or impossible to ninja loot will not be there in Classic. There were a few times where I joined a Molten Core pug, and the raid leader decided that he would take any loot he wanted and auction the loot he didn't want off for gold. And with how lockouts worked, if you joined a group like that, then you were done with the raid for the week. I'm curious how prevalent ninja looting is on private servers. Now that I've mentioned raid lockouts though, I really wish Blizzard has modern raid lockout mechanics, otherwise it might simply be too risky to join a pug. Ninja looting aside, let's say they fell apart halfway through the raid. Good luck reforming that group. It's most likely you're out of that raid for the whole week. Whereas with modern lockouts, you could just join another pickup group at any stage, and you just wouldn't be eligible for loot off of the bosses you already killed. If they go with the original system, which they probably will, you might not see me in many pugs, lol. And 7 Winters also adds this. Paladins / Shamans and racials affect a lot though. Good luck PvPing as an Alliance Warlock when undead have Will of the Forsaken. And with things like Fear Ward and Blessings, namely Salvation, I'd say raiding is easier on Alliance, at least slightly. I think Alliance usually win Alterac Valley, and the other two are a bit more even. Next we have this post from member Minoru, also on Horde and Alliance issues, who says this. As far as I'm aware, Alliance tends to do better in PvE due to racial / paladin / player attitude, while Horde tends to do better in PvP due to racial / shaman / player attitude. Battleground win rates depend heavily on the server and presence of PvP-oriented guilds, but trend towards Horde victories in Warsong Gulch and Arathi Basin. Alterac Valley is a different beast. It was generally regarded as Alliance favoured back in vanilla, but apparently in private servers a back access point was found where the Horde can skip the bridge and access the Alliance base directly, giving them a huge advantage. Aside from those factors, there's always aesthetics. You're going to be looking at your character and your faction cities for a long, long time. Better it be something you can live with. And as always, it helps to play where your friends are. It's a little disheartening to play one side when most of your friends want to play the other. Next we have this post from member Funk Nasty, who says the following. My experience in PvP is the best team wins. Since I play Alliance, Horde loses the majority of games. Today, for instance, I solo queued for about 6 Warsong matches as Alliance and won them all. When I was ranking a couple of years ago on Nost as Alliance, I rarely lost a game. Now it's time for Memory Lane. Each week, Countdown to Classic invites listeners to send in their most memorable or funniest memories from back in the vanilla days. And today we start with this email from listener Ashen, who says the following. Hi Josh, I must say I found Countdown to Classic only recently, but I've been hooked ever since. And I say thank you Ashen, I appreciate that. But we get to their story and Ashen says this. The year is early 2006 and me and my high school friends just came from lunch and we were waiting for our last class in the afternoon when we saw two guys crammed around one notebook playing a game. We got intrigued and asked them about it. On their screen was a dark forest, a narrow path lit by a lantern, and in the middle a small character with a demon by his side. They showed us how he would cast spells and kill wolves, how large the eerie forest was, and asked if we wanted to see the map. They pressed M and a map appeared. I realized then that the forest was massive. And then they right-clicked and I saw how extremely huge this world was. And then they right-clicked again and there was another freaking continent. We got the game delivered during the next week, and what a long week it was. I still remember the exact spot near the border of Duskwood and Redridge where I fell in love with WoW without even playing it. Hope you enjoy my memory as much as I enjoyed typing it out. Cheers, and with much love from the Czech Republic. And I say thank you so much for that one. I really did enjoy reading that one out, and I want more and more like them from all of you listeners. But next we go to this one from Discord member Balls of Steel, who says, I thought I'd share a story of me being a total noob in a raid back in the day on my Orc Warrior in Zolgarub. Just to preface this, I was one of those kinds of players that really liked to just stack certain stats. We were on Hakar, and I was lucky enough to have gotten Iron Foe and Hand of Justice after many runs of BRD the week before. Our main tank just pulled the boss, and the Shaman from our group just summoned the God Totem, aka Wind Fury Totem, and the second I went to hit the boss, I saw about 8 instances of white damage just appear instantly. Hakar turns to me, one-shotted me, and went back to hitting our main tank. As soon as this happened, almost everyone else in the raid asked what the fuck happened. I looked back at my combat log, and all of my extra attack procs procced off each other, and I instantly took aggro. As I explained this to the raid, they immediately broke out in laughter, and it remains one of my most memorable moments in vanilla. And I say thank you, Balls of Steel, for that one. But next we have this submission from, again, Discord member and Countdown Council member, Pal Furus, who says this. Hey Josh, here's another memory lane. Right before I took the plunge into World of Warcraft, I had built myself a top-of-the-line, small form-factor PC. The downside to this type of computer is while it's easy to carry, they tend to run warm as they have components that aren't heat-optimized. Once I got into WoW, I would play with my video settings running at max and really take in the world that Blizzard had prepared for us. All was good until I started raiding, when often during runs my screen would turn into a crazy pixelated mess. My theory was that the strain of having to render all of the spell effects, player tunes and mobs would put a strain on the video card and generate too much heat. I was so desperate for a fix that during the winter months I would play with the top off of my computer and the window to my bedroom open. None of this seemed to help though, so in a fit of desperation I pulled the video card out to see if there was a way to modify it to allow for better airflow. To my surprise, I found that the pathways to allow air over the chips had been clogged with what appeared to be clothes dryer lint. After some compressed air, raiding continued normally and life was good again. I'm glad that you sorted those issues out, Pal Furious, and you got to raid on. Next we have this submission from Lord Byron, who tells this fascinating story, and this is a bit of a long one, but it's a really good one, and that's why I'm reading it, so listen up. And Lord Byron sent me a story about his now wife. So listen to this. While in college, my wife was set up on a date by her best friend. Her best friend had set up this date because her boyfriend at the time thought his friend and my wife would hit it off. My wife and this fella were each given each other's phone numbers. They were going to meet at one of the campus dormitory halls and then go out to dinner. My wife arrives at the dorm hall and proceeded to wait for 20 minutes without anyone showing up. She had a rough description of the guy. She does not remember this guy's name, so we shall call him Dale. Finally, she texted Dale, and he said that he'd be ready in 10 minutes or so. After 10 minutes went by, my wife texted him again, and Dale said that she should come to his dorm room and that he should be ready by the time she gets there. Dale sent her the room number and off she went to his dorm room. She knocks on the door and he says, "Come in." Now, as most gentlemen know at this point, he probably should have at least opened the door for her as being a lady coming into the room, but nope, not Dale. Anyways, first she notices the smell that was emanating from the room. Nothing but Doritos, Mountain Dew, and leftover dorm food that he'd snuck into his room. He was sitting at his computer with his back to the door playing World of Warcraft. Now, my wife is a lady to her core. Despite initial thoughts on a date, she always at least let the gentleman take her to the dinner. Her internal common courtesy dictates that. So Dale says that he's almost done playing and they should be able to leave shortly. Granted, he's still not turned around at this point. My wife goes inside his dorm room and starts to talk to him while he's playing. She proceeds to get one-word answers to questions for the next 2 hours. 2 full hours. He kept playing WoW while she proceeded to try and have some type of a conversation with this man. Finally, my wife had enough and excused herself. It was then that Dale finally turned around for the first time and he saw what a mistake he had made and how beautiful of a woman he had sitting behind him trying to have a conversation with him the whole time. Dale suddenly became flustered and apologized profusely, trying to salvage something. My wife very politely said, "You are the first date where I'm going to break my own rules and leave before I even give you the chance to get to the dinner. Normally, I at least try to make it through a dinner on a first date, but you're the first person who has done so poorly that I'm breaking my own rule." She turned and left. My message to Dale, from wherever you are and your fellow brother in WoW. Now, Dale, whoever you truly are and wherever you are, just remember that on that day, this is the day that you gave a fellow brother in WoW an absolutely incredibly difficult time to prove that World of Warcraft can be played with balance. I did eventually win my wife back over to the idea of me playing, but only because she learned how a proper man can handle responsibilities and a normal gaming hobby. I hope you feel bad, Dale, because you should. Oh boy, you should, after treating a lady in such a way. I hope you learn from your mistakes, but never forget what you lost that day, because it'll help you keep your gaming habit in check. And Dale, you were probably an Alliance player, weren't you? But anyway, I really enjoyed that story, and I've got to tell you guys, I'm a bit of a romantic at heart. So even though that wasn't necessarily a romantic story, it's the way in which they somehow wound up together in the end. So I'm always going to be a sucker for couple stories. So that's nice, even though that wasn't the most coupley of stories. But you catch my drift. But there's more memory lanes coming on Friday's episode, everyone. So if you haven't heard what you sent through to me read out yet, do not fret. Please, I will get to it eventually. I promise you. If you write them to me, I'll read them out. But they are flowing now, and I thank you all for that. So now we're just going to go through a little bit of cleanup. I've just got a couple of quick emails to read out, and I'll tear through them, and then we're done, I promise. So this first one from listener Ali Saunder, who says the following. On the subject of classic Warcraft servers and no changes, last year Blizzard remastered StarCraft 1. They did extensive discussions beforehand with the pro players, casters, and so on how to do it correctly, and the result was a cosmetic upgrade so faithful to the original that they replicated bugs like a 1-pixel hole in the wall that attackers of certain sizes could weasel through. Nothing changed other than it looked prettier and you could turn it off if you wanted, and there was a new UI skin at the bottom to show units and upgrades that you could also turn off and play the game exactly the way it always was. The remaster went over well with players, and since then Blizzard has put out a patch that added widescreen support. The 20th anniversary event gave players another UI skin to choose from. Slowly, optional changes are being added in that they don't change the game or change it minimally. I think that this approach would work well for Warcraft Classic servers. If only I can see us running around with new models and you see us running around with old ones because we checked or unchecked a settings box, who will ever know or care? Blizzard could start out a pure Classic server and in 6 months perhaps dip a toe into the changes please waters with some very small optional fixes, or additions like grass that waves as you run through it, or new combat animations. If the demand is still there for Classic, maybe then they could launch Classic Plus, a Classic server that includes things like transmog or pet battles, things that have little effect on the game. Everyone gets what they want, and never the two shall meet, and the decision will then be made by the players, not Blizzard. Do they want changes or do they not? Although honestly, if there's any way for modders to create GTFO, DBM, Auctionator, and the rest in Classic WoW, they will, and you can bet a lot of us will use them. Next we have this email from listener Tantamount, who says the following. In response to the latest podcast, it's been theory crafted to death that a holy priest specced into shadow weaving is more effective for the raid than a straight shadow priest. Now that email was in response to my Shadow Priest focus that we did recently on the show. And I'm not sure if I touched on this in a recent episode, but after I did that episode, there was a really, really good back and forth on the WoW Classic subreddit on Shadow Priest and Holy Weaving that I hope to touch on another episode. So I'm glad that everyone is picking up the ball and running with it and chatting about some of the things raised on the show. But next we go to this from listener Soka, who emailed me and said the following. I just found your podcast on Spotify and I've started to listen to it since myself. I'm really interested in Classic and I really enjoy your show. And I say, thank you, Soka. And Soka goes on with this. I'm firmly in the no change camp, but I put a huge asterisk on it. I understand that many people in the no change camp keep saying no changes because they feel changes are a slippery slope and removing the buggy lag will open the door to faster flight paths, which will open the door to flying mounts. But what if we could get the removal of buggy lag and the straighter flight path, but have a hard no on the flying mounts and never include it no matter what? If the change is optional and doesn't affect the gameplay of others, then go ahead and let the change in. For example, the new character models. This is just a change affecting me and my screen, and you as a player playing with me will never know the difference. Live and let live. The final change I'd accept, but would be greatly skeptical about, would be class balance. Hear me out. I was playing a feral druid and I loved my feral druid, but when my friend told me that I would be forced to go resto to do raiding, I told him to fuck off. I'm not a freaking healer. I hate being support, but I do understand that as a feral I can both DPS and tank, and if I could do both as well as a straight prot warrior or a rogue, that would make them useless. But can we find a balance where I'm a good enough tank to be brought as an off tank, but people would still bring a prot warrior as a main tank? Can we find a balance where all specs can have a place in these 40-man raids, instead of bringing 29 frost mages and 1 warlock, because frost mages all share the same debuff slot and warlocks are needed for curse of element? Then I keep hearing people say stuff like, I don't like speed runs in dungeons, or item levels are stupid. Well, I've got news for you. That's stuff brought in by the community, not by Blizzard. Yes, eye level got included by Blizzard, but it all started by item scores, which was an add-on created by the community. If Blizzard added a chronometer so people can brag that they did dead mines in under 20 minutes or did molten core in 30 minutes, and this didn't give any other benefit other than bragging rights, what's the aim? Go find a group who don't care about it. There are a few things Blizzard can do to prevent people wanting to run a dungeon or raid as fast as possible. And that's all the listener submissions for the week. Just before I let you go, I want to give a quick shout out to the following Countdown to Classic Patreons and Countdown Council members: Borzen, Palfurus, Seven Winters, Tsunami, and Wilson Ma. Thank you so much. The show would not be the same without your support. And you've obviously unlocked the shout out every episode, so get used to that. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate it so much. Also, thank you to new patrons: Iron Lion, Rarebit, Myrtle Banks, Dominance, and Vin Propane. Thank you so much for your support of the show. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. It means the world to me. Now, obviously, everyone, BlizzCon, guess what? I got tickets. There's a VOD on my Twitch channel if you want to hear me talking about that. Countdown to Classic is going to BlizzCon. More on this later on. I've been a little bit too busy lately to talk about it, but I'll talk to you more about it as we go on. But that's great news, and thank you so much to all the Discord members that tried to help me out with that. Luckily, in the end, I got a ticket through other people. I didn't wind up getting one through the sale because I missed out, but that's okay. It all worked out all right for me in the end. And obviously, there's things out there, like if you are going to BlizzCon, there's things like Con Before the Storm that's happening. They've got a Kickstarter going, so go and check that out if you're of the mind to head to Con Before the Storm. And there'll be a lot of parties that I'll be going to that we can talk. Obviously, we're a long way away from that, but we can talk all about that closer to the time. Obviously, obviously, everyone, hey, look, if you love the show, if you love what you heard today, please check out the Countdown to Classic Patreon page, the Ko-Fi page. The links are in the show notes. Any support you could show the show would be amazing. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that you can get back in return from the show. It's not just a donation for nothing. I am supplying things to you like the cool prizes that I mentioned at the top of the show. Please do check everything out. But for now, that's it for today's show. I'll see you back on Friday for the lore episode. Going to be covering off on Dire Maul. Can't wait for that one. Have a good day, everyone. I'll speak to you later. Bye.